The emergency beacon had been screaming across every frequency for 6 standard hours when the human survey vessel Ardent Hope dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the 4th planet of the Valorous system. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge and watched the planet grow larger on the main display screen. Smoke covered nearly a third of the northern continent. From orbit, it looked like a wound spreading across green flesh. The Valorous system belonged to the Keth Collective. The Keth were an ancient species. They had traveled between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. They were tall and thin creatures with silver skin and 4 arms. They moved slowly and thought even slower. Their lifespans stretched across thousands of years. They had no concept of urgency. They had no word in their language for emergency. Lieutenant Chung pulled up the sensor readings and let out a low whistle. The fire had started 3 days ago from a lightning strike in the northern forest. The forest was called the Singing Woods by the Keth because the wind moving through the massive trees created a sound like music. The trees were older than human civilization. Some of them had been saplings when the first pyramids were built on Earth. The Keth considered the forest sacred. They had built no cities near it. They had placed no fire suppression systems within 1,000 kilometers of its borders. Now the forest was dying. Elena studied the data streaming across her console. The fire had grown beyond anything the Keth could control. Their firefighting technology was primitive by human standards. They had never needed anything better. Fires on Keth worlds burned slowly and died on their own. But this fire was different. A drought had dried the underbrush. Unusual winds pushed the flames faster than anyone had predicted. The fire moved like a living thing, hungry and angry. The communication officer reported an incoming transmission from the Keth emergency coordinator. Elena accepted the call. A Keth face appeared on screen. His silver skin had gone pale, almost white. His 4 hands moved in patterns of distress. The Keth spoke slowly, each word measured and careful. He explained that the fire would reach the heart of the Singing Woods within 2 days. He explained that evacuation efforts had failed. Many creatures lived in the deep forest, animals that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. The Keth had tried to guide them to safety, but the animals did not understand. They ran in circles. They hid in the undergrowth. They would burn. Elena asked about the Keth population in the area. The coordinator paused for a long moment. He admitted that 3,000 Keth lived in a settlement called Morning Light on the eastern edge of the forest. They had refused to leave. The settlement had stood for 8,000 years. The Keth there had decided they would rather die than abandon their home. The transmission ended. Elena stood in silence. Her crew watched her, waiting. She made a decision. The Ardent Hope carried a crew of 47 humans. They were surveyors and scientists, not soldiers or firefighters. But they were human, and humans did not stand by while others burned. Elena called the engineering chief to the bridge. Marcus Webb was a large man with scarred hands and a mind that never stopped working. She told him she needed a plan. She needed a way to stop a fire that covered 10,000 square kilometers and growing. She needed it in 2 hours. Marcus laughed. Then he realized she was serious. He gathered his team in the engineering bay, and they started working. Meanwhile, Elena contacted the Galactic Council station in the nearby system. She requested emergency support. The response came back within minutes. Support was unavailable. The nearest fire suppression fleet was 18 days away. The Council observer noted that the Keth had filed an acceptance of natural disaster protocol. They had decided to let the fire burn. It was their right under galactic law. Elena did not care about galactic law. The shuttle bay became a workshop. Humans moved with speed that would have terrified the Keth. They cannibalized equipment from the survey labs. They ripped apart emergency pods and recycled the materials. They argued and shouted and pushed each other to work faster. Marcus directed the chaos with waves of his hands and streams of creative profanity. They built drone controllers from navigation computers. They converted atmospheric sampling devices into thermal sensors. They turned the ship's water reclamation system into a mobile pumping station. They created something that had never existed before, a fire suppression network made from spare parts and desperate creativity. Elena landed the first shuttle at the Morning Light settlement as the sun was setting. The smoke turned the sky orange and red. Ash fell like gray snow. The Keth watched the humans arrive with confusion written across their silver faces. The eldest Keth approached Elena. He was over 4,000 years old. He had seen human ships pass through Keth space before. He had never spoken to a human. He asked why they had come. Elena told him they had come to stop the fire. The old Keth shook his head slowly. The fire could not be stopped. It was too large, too fast. The Keth had accepted this. They had made their peace with dying. Elena looked at the old alien for a long moment. Then she smiled. She told him that humans were not very good at accepting things. The next 20 hours tested every limit of human endurance. The crew split into teams and spread across the eastern edge of the forest. They deployed their makeshift drone network. The drones were clumsy and slow compared to military equipment. They crashed often. The crew rebuilt them on the spot and sent them back up. Marcus led a team to the river that curved around the settlement. They set up pumping stations and ran hoses made from ship-haul material into the forest. The water pressure was not enough. Marcus jury-rigged a compression system using engine parts. The pressure increased. The hoses held. Elena coordinated from a command post on a hilltop. She watched the fire approach on her sensor screen. It moved faster than the models had predicted. The wind had shifted again. She had 6 hours left, maybe less. She called every team leader. She told them to abandon the wider perimeter. Everyone would focus on a single line directly in front of the settlement. They would stop the fire there, or they would not stop it at all. The forest creatures began arriving at dawn. They came in waves, running and flying and crawling away from the flames. Birds with feathers like living jewels. Animals with 6 legs and eyes that glowed in the smoke. Tiny things that squeaked and larger things that roared. They flooded past the human positions in a river of panic and fear. Some of the Keth emerged from their homes to watch. They had never seen so many creatures from the deep forest gathered in one place. Many of these species had not been documented. The Keth scientists recorded everything with trembling hands. A young human named Sarah Chun, the lieutenant's daughter serving her first mission, noticed something strange. A group of large animals had stopped running. They stood at the edge of the tree line, looking back toward the fire. She moved closer and saw why. There were young ones still in the forest. The adults would not leave without them. Sarah did not ask permission. She grabbed a fire blanket and a mask and ran into the smoke. Elena saw Sarah disappear into the burning forest on her sensor screen. She almost called her back. Instead, she sent 2 more crew members after her with additional equipment. Sarah found the young creatures huddled in a hollow beneath a fallen tree. The fire was less than 100 meters away. The heat blistered her exposed skin. She wrapped the creatures in the fire blanket and carried them back toward safety. The 2 crew members met her halfway and helped her run. They emerged from the forest just as the fire reached the tree line. The human water cannons activated. 37 streams of compressed water hit the flames simultaneously. Steam erupted in massive clouds. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in seconds. The fire pushed against the water line like a living enemy testing defenses. The water pushed back. For 2 hours, the battle continued. The fire found gaps in the water coverage. Teams moved to fill them. Equipment failed. Teams fixed it or replaced it with something else. Humans collapsed from heat and exhaustion. Other humans dragged them to safety and took their positions. The old Keth elder watched from the settlement entrance. He had lived 4,000 years. He had witnessed the rise and fall of empires across a dozen worlds. He had never seen anything like this. 47 beings fighting against a force of nature with nothing but machines made from scrap and a refusal to give up. The fire began to die at noon. The flames fell back from the waterline. The wind shifted again, this time pushing the fire away from the settlement. The southern edge of the forest continued to burn, but the heart of the Singing Woods stood untouched. The creatures that had fled were already beginning to return to their homes. Elena sat down on the scorched ground and watched her crew celebrating. They hugged each other and laughed and cried. They were covered in ash, and their skin was red from heat exposure. Several would need medical treatment for burns. None of them seemed to care. The old Keth elder approached her. He moved slowly, as Keth always did. When he reached her, he lowered himself to sit beside her on the ground. He did not speak for a long time. Finally, he asked a question. He asked why humans had risked their lives for a forest that did not belong to them and creatures they had never seen before. Elena thought about the question. She could have given many answers. She could have talked about duty or compassion or the value of life. Instead, she told him the truth. She said that humans could not watch something beautiful burn without trying to save it. She said it was not a choice. It was simply what humans did. The elder was quiet again. Then he made a sound that Elena had never heard from a Keth before. It took her a moment to realize he was laughing. He told her that his people had watched humans for centuries. They had seen humans fight wars over resources and ideas. They had seen humans destroy and rebuild and destroy again. They had never understood the species. They had considered humans dangerous and unstable. Now, the elder said, he understood something new. Humans were dangerous because they cared too much. They could not accept loss. They could not stand by while others suffered. This made them reckless and foolish and sometimes cruel, but it also made them capable of miracles. He stood slowly and extended all 4 of his hands to Elena. She took 2 of them and let him help her to her feet. Behind them, the Singing Woods continued to make music in the wind. The sound was quieter now. Many trees had burned, but the forest would survive. The creatures would breed and the trees would grow, and in 1,000 years, the Keth would remember this day as the day humans taught them something new about the universe. Elena returned to her ship that evening. Her crew gathered in the common area, too tired to sleep. They shared food and stories and quietly proud smiles. The Ardent Hope left the Velaris system 2 days later, after confirming that the fire had died completely. The Keth had requested that the humans stay longer. Elena declined. There was more work to do. Other places needed help. Other fires needed fighting. The survey vessel disappeared into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind only a memory and a debt the Keth would spend centuries trying to repay.